Hello, 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 and welcome back to Spin Cycle Live. I am your host, Nathan Hale, and happy Memorial Day to everyone out there today. I hope you're having a great Monday. You're not getting rained out like the rest of us here in the Midwest are today. So, we got a special show today. It's a Monday, like always, but we're at 6 p.m. now, Eastern Time. 6 p.m. Eastern Time is our new show time going forward. Even after the summer is over and done with, we're going to stick with that time. We'll see how it goes. We're trying to figure out really where our viewers are at, where they're watching at, and how to get more people watching our show, especially on platforms like Rumble and YouTube. So we're hoping that putting out 6 p.m. will be a better time for you all. But we got a lot to talk about today. I hope you're having a great, fantastic day. And we got Harvard. We got Pride parades back in the news because it's almost June 1st, guys. Next week it's June 1st. Everything's going to hit fan on June 1st. It's going to be pandemonium out there. And the FBI is opening up some new cases. Those are the subjects of today's cycles, but we're having a good one. But let's get right into it. Our very first story of the week. Let's pull up my screen here. It comes from the Post. So Trump is considering pulling $3 billion from very anti-Semitic Harvard. So he rips the school for not handing over a list of radicalized lunatics. All right, so President Trump said Monday he wanted to yank $3 billion in federal grants away from a very anti-Semitic Harvard University as he ripped the Ivy League university for not handing over a full list of foreign students to identify radicalized lunatics. Quote, I'm considering taking $3 billion of grant money away from a very anti-Semitic Harvard and giving it to a trade school. Giving it to trade schools all across the country, he said on Truth Social. Quote, what a great investment that would be for the United States and so badly needed. So I think that's all I want to read from that story. You can go and read the full story for yourself. Link is in the description if you're watching on Rumble or YouTube. But I think this is a great idea. That is a great idea. Anything we can do to, push the big Ivy League universities to the back burner, I'm all for it. We have a shortage of trade school workers here in the United States right now. We need more people going into the trades. We need more electricians, plumbers. We need more people who can actually do things and actually build things with their hands, right? We need more of those in this country, right? They're getting paid so much money. I mean, I think the median salary for a plumber right now is $100,000. That's pretty freaking good money, right? If you're willing to do the job. So we need more people who are willing to do stuff like that. So I think this is great. And Harvard has a massive endowment. Start pulling from that, guys. You know how much money $3 billion is and how good it would do for trade schools all across the country, even if they got a fraction of that. That'd be great. Heck, use $3 billion to start up American University or, MAGA University, whatever Trump was wanting to do with the whole university thing. Use that money to go do that with it, right? Do something more productive with it. I even think that if you turn this $3 billion into a scholarship program for people to go to trade school, that would be even better, right? Allow people to get a grant to go to trade school, to learn how to do trade, to go and do a trade, right? I think that would even be a better use. I mean, we can spitball all sorts of different great use of this money other than going to Harvard, right? $3 billion to go directly to Harvard or $3 billion for students all across the country to benefit, right? I think that we're nearing a time in the university system where the Ivy Leagues are slowly starting to crumble apart. They've shown that they're not credible any longer. I mean, heck, Harvard had a president who was plagiarizing information, right, for all of her essays, for the few that she actually wrote, right? So I think this is great. I want to see more of this. Would I like to see that money saved, not spent at all? Absolutely. But if we're going to spend on something, I'd rather it be spent to actually benefit the vast majority of students instead of giving it to the top 1% wealthiest students that can afford to go to Harvard for their benefit, right? That's all I got to say about that. All right. Moving on, let's talk about Pride for a little bit. So Pride is coming up. Pride Month is, right around the corner, and I think it's going to be a lot better this year, right? Uh, so we have Trump back in office. I think that we're seeing the woke gender ideology stuff going out the window, and yeah, so clearly it's having an impact in New York. So in New York, 25% of corporate donors are pulling their funding from New York City Pride. Fantastic, right? In my opinion. So we'll talk more about why that's fantastic in just a moment. But roughly 25, this is from the Post-Millennial, by the way. So roughly 25% of corporate sponsors have scaled back or withdrawn support for New York City annual Pride events, citing economic uncertainty and concerns over possible retribution from the Trump administration. Okay, I'm not so sure about the retribution part, but certainly economic uncertainty. So according to a report from the New York Times, Heritage of Pride, the organization that produces New York City Pride, confirmed that nearly all of the last year's major corporate donors have either pulled out or reduced their support. Kevin Kilbride, a spokesman for the group, or so we say spokesperson, we don't want to assume anyone's gender, how much is spokesperson for the group said, or spokes they, we don't know. We actually shouldn't even assume that people are persons anymore who are a part of these organizations, right? So spokes they for the group said this drop is funding may force the cancellation of several events held throughout the year. Quote, the vast majority of what we have heard is that folks are treading carefully from an economic perspective, said Kilbride. He added that, quote, some folks have definitely mentioned the fear of potential throwback from the Trump administration if you are a big corporation or you are publicly supporting DEI initiatives. Among the companies pulling back are MasterCard, Nissan, and Gartner. Heritage of Pride now faces a $750,000 shortfall, and on Wednesday launched a grassroots fundraising campaign to try and raise $25,000 by the end of June to help keep Pride events free and to the public. End of June? Pride's over at the end of June. What are you waiting for the end of June for? You guys need to start fundraising months ago. Pride Month is June, as far as I know, right? Unless, are we extending Pride Month now? All right. So let's talk about this for a second. So, the whole situation with Pride right now, in my opinion, is so over the top, overblown. As far as gay Pride goes, right? We got our rights. Us gays, we have the right to marriage, right? We can adopt kids. We got all of our rights. That's all we wanted, right? Pride has now been turned into this mechanism for the trans and the they thems and all the other letters in the Wi-Fi password to show up and do their worst, in my opinion. So what did we see last year? Well, we saw in places like Seattle, in Portland, in New York City Pride, for that matter, we saw parents bringing their kids to Pride parades and then being bamboozled by radical trans activists, literally naked. That's what we saw. We saw this all across the country. This is not an isolated event, right? You can go and look up the photos. The media has tried to cover it up, but you can go look up the photos if you want to. We saw time and time again naked people, like fully naked, like everything hanging out, all of your flaps hanging out, men and women, going around on bicycles, walking around parades with kids around, just out in the open for all of humanity to see, right? It was a whole lot of different places that were doing this. So I don't have any issue with these corporate sponsors pulling out of their Pride agendas. And I think this would be a bigger deal too if these corporations actually had backbone and were pro-Pride universally. Right. So there's always the trope. There's always the meme that comes out whenever Pride Month comes around that companies. I'm not sure if MasterCard and Nissan were one of them, but I know that like BMW, for instance, was in there. But the companies tend to change their little emblem on social media, and in June they change it to a rainbow flag, right, for Pride Month. And all of these different major corporations change their emblems on social media to be Pride appropriate, right? But they don't change their emblems for the Middle Eastern branches of their corporations, right? Because it's they view gay people differently over there. And I think this would be a bigger deal if those companies were like pro Pride universally, and they were like, you know what, we're going to put our rainbow flag emblems on all of the different on all of our different social media, even in the Middle East. But they're not doing that. And to pull out of Pride when clearly it's not getting the attention that it once needed to get, I don't have any issue with it. I've never gone to a Pride event. I think it's all over the top. I don't want to be associated with these people. You see the people who go to Pride nowadays. I was just talking about all the naked people who show up, all the people walking around with their hoo-has hanging out. Yeah, I don't want to be associated with them. I'm just fine sticking around here. Thank you very much. I'm ready to go hibernate in June. You won't see me talking about that. So, yeah. More of this. I want to see more corporate donors pulling out of it, and to suggest that they would get retribution from the Trump administration for donating to Pride. I hardly think that that's even a talking point, frankly. But that's all. That sounds like some Project 2025 BS that has not come to fruition. But that's all I gotta say about that. Let's go and move on to our next story. So we talked about this before, but the bill that is allowing the 10 Commandments in Texas schools to be hung up everywhere, it's heading to Greg Abbott's desk. So let's read through this. So with days left in the legislative session, the Texas House passed bills authorizing prayer and Bible reading in public schools and requiring the 10 Commandments to be posted in classrooms. Democrats oppose them, citing biblical references to slavery that teachers are not qualified to teach or shouldn't be discussing. SB 10, filed by State Senator Phil King, and SB 11, filed by State Senator Mays Middleton, previously passed the Senate. SB 10 would require every public school classroom to post a copy of the 10 Commandments, beginning the 2025-2026 school year. Last year, Louisiana became the first state to require the 10 Commandments to be displayed in public schools. Its law is being challenged and is expected to be ruled on by the Supreme Court, the Center Square reported. Governor Greg Abbott supports the bill, having defended the right to have a 10 Commandments monument erected at the Texas Capitol when he was Attorney General, roughly 20 years ago. He argued before the U.S. Supreme Court that it was constitutional and won. The monument remains on the Capitol grounds. Now, this is interesting to me. Number one, it's definitely going to get challenged. It will. And obviously the one in Louisiana is getting challenged. I'm not even going to take necessarily, a First Amendment or an anti-Christian perspective on all of this, but I think that conservatives and Republicans are walking on a slippery road when they start wanting to incorporate their religious perspectives into the mainstream, into public schools. Because what's going to end up happening is if the Supreme Court rules that you can have religious emblems in public schools, but you have to be fair to all religions. All of a sudden, we're going to start seeing Islamic posters being put up. We're going to start seeing all these other religions putting up their material in public school classrooms. And it's not just going to be Christian stuff, right? We as a country, we look pretty fondly on Christianity. And I don't really have an issue with the 10 Commandments being hung up in a classroom. I think they're all, fairly reasonable to have up there. They're pretty good things to have. But you got to look at it from all the perspectives. And there's a lot of whack jobs out there. And if you're going to give an inch, they're going to take a mile. And you're going to start seeing stuff from other religions that you and I don't like. So that's why I take the perspective of I don't think any of it should be put in classrooms, because I don't want that can of worms being opened up to the Islamic temples and to all the other religions out there to start wanting to argue, hey, well, we want to put our teachings up in public school classrooms too. If the Christians can do it and the Catholics can do it, so can we, right? That's where I see things like this heading to, and I just don't think it ends well for anyone, right? Especially the kids involved. So that's all I gotta say about that. But let's go and move on to a story from the FBI. So the FBI, I guess, is finally doing something. I haven't heard anything from the FBI in the entire time that Trump has been in office so far, but now it seems like they're up to something. They're finally doing stuff, right? So the FBI is going to be revisiting the Biden White House cocaine find, the Dobbs leak, and the January 6th pipe bombs. Now, the media has done a great job at pushing all of these things under the rug, right? Does anyone remember the J6 pipe bombs? No, you don't. Because anytime they talk about January 6th, they talk about all of the crazy folks that showed up to the Capitol, tried to overturn a presidential election, right? Many of which were there peacefully. Do you remember the Dobbs leak? I certainly don't. I completely forgot that the Dobbs leak even happened. What even is the Dobbs leak, right? I'm sure a whole bunch of people forgot about that. And the cocaine find in the White House, the cocaine find, I think was the most recent of all of them. And I haven't heard about that in quite a while. But they told us that all these cases were closed, but apparently the FBI wants to put in an actual effort now and figure out what actually the deal with all of this was. So 3 of the biggest unsolved mysteries in recent political history are being reviewed by the FBI. Deputy Director Dan Bongino announced on Monday. Bongino, a former NYPD officer, Secret Service agent, and conservative commentator, revealed on X that he and the bureau director, Kash Patel, have decided to, quote, either reopen or push additional resources and investigative action to the discovery of cocaine in the West Wing during the Biden administration. The leak of the draft Supreme Court opinion overturning Roe v. Wade and the planting of pipe bombs outside the Democrat and Republican national committees hours before the J6 2021 Capitol riots. Quote, I have requested briefings of these cases weekly, and we are making progress, Bongino added in his post. Quote, if you have any investigative tips on these matters that may assist us, please contact the FBI. On July 2nd, 2023, a dime-sized bag of cocaine was discovered in the West Wing, forcing the evacuation of the White House. That's what the cocaine was, right? A Secret Service agent had discovered the illegal drug in a cubby located in a vestibule 1 floor below the Oval Office and steps from the Situation Room during a routine sweep of the premises. Then President Joe Biden and his family, including first son Hunter Biden, who had struggled with crack addiction in the past, were at Camp David at the time to mark Independence Day weekend. After 11 days of investigating, the Secret Service wrapped up its probe without identifying a suspect, quote, due to lack of physical evidence and a supposed lack of cameras to capture who may have dropped off the baggie. President Trump speculated in February that, quote, either Joe or Hunter left the illegal drug in the executive mansion. The Secret Service wrapped up its probe without identifying a suspect due to lack of physical evidence. What do you mean lack of it? It's right there. That's the evidence. That's the picture. See that's the baggie of cocaine, guys. That's the physical evidence right there. That's all the evidence you need. What do you mean there weren't cameras around to figure out who dropped it off? Right? Can't you do a fingerprint analysis on it? There's cameras all over the White House. What do you mean there's lack of physical evidence, right? There's evidence right there. We have a picture of it. Oh my gosh. All right. So this is the Dobbs leak now. All right. So that was the first case. We're on to the second one. So in May of 2022, Politico published a leaked draft of Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito's opinion in the case of Dobbs v. Jackson's women's health care, upholding a Mississippi law banning abortion after 15 weeks and leaving regulation of the procedure up to each state. And then these crazy folks in masks showed up outside people like Amy Coney Barrett's house and, protested in front of it. How nice of them, right? What a country we've become. The stunning leak set off protests at the homes of conservative justices and represented a devastating breach of long-respected confidentiality surrounding the High Court's deliberations. No kidding, right? Chief Justice John Roberts promptly ordered an investigation, but after 8 months, Marshal of the Supreme Court, Gail Curley, said in January 2023 that she and the court's internal police force had been unable to identify the leaker. There's only so many people who work on the Supreme Court. Are you kidding me? You couldn't find the leaker. Okay. Convenient this all happened under Joe Biden's presidency, by the way. All right, so the DC pipe bombs. On the night of January 5th, 2021, someone carrying a backpack and wearing a gray hoodie, sweatshirt, mask, gloves, glasses, and a pair of Nike Air Max Speed Turf sneakers dropped 2 pipe bombs outside Republican and Democrat headquarters in the national capital. While the explosives did not detonate, the FBI assessed that they were viable. Then Vice President-elect Kamala Harris visited the Democrat National Committee headquarters the next day, shortly before the Capitol riot began, and was evacuated after the pipe bombs were identified by a passerby. So it's just crazy that we don't know any of this that happened, right? It was all covered up. Awfully convenient that this guy was in office at the time, dealing with all of this. So I think this is great. I would love to know who put all this together, and if it was Republican operatives, we should know about it, right? But my suspicion is that the reason why it was all covered up was it was a whole bunch of Democrats who planted this stuff, trying to screw us over and trying to win over yet another presidential election and midterm election, right? So I think this is great. The FBI is finally doing something about this, and they're actually looking into it. And I trust Dan Bongino to an extent, right? They screwed up the Epstein file. Same thing with the Department of Justice. But I mean, I would somewhat trust their opinion if they come out and say, hey, no new evidence was found. I'd be like, all right, case closed. They're never going to find anything. But be pretty crazy if they did. Be pretty freaking crazy if they found evidence. So we're like, yeah, the Biden administration covered all of this up. This was a massive cover-up by Joe Biden. Yet another reason why he was such an awful president. Yet the left loves to put him up on a pedestal right there alongside Obama, right? And of today's episode, we have to talk about the big, beautiful bill. All right. So this comes from the Hill, and I got some thoughts about this, guys. All right. Strap in. GOP senators say Trump's big, beautiful bill needs spending cuts. 2 conservative GOP senators on Sunday said the, quote, big, beautiful bill passed by President Trump's behest by House Republicans needs to be cut down to size, signaling huge challenges in enacting Trump's plans in the Senate. The 2 GOP senators, Rand Paul of Kentucky and Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, are both Trump allies, but they signaled they are unhappy with House legislation that they say will burst the budget. Quote, I think the cuts currently in the bill are wimpy and anemic, but I still would support the bill even with wimpy and anemic cuts if they weren't going to explode the debt, Paul said in an interview with Fox News Sunday. Paul had earlier said that he was a, quote, hard no on the House GOP bill, which was passed by the House on Thursday. On Sunday, Paul said, quote, the math just doesn't add up, and the language allowing the government to increase the debt ceiling by $4 trillion has been removed because it's not conservative. Quote, there's got to be someone left in Washington who thinks debt is wrong and deficits are wrong and wants to go in the other direction, he said. Quote, somebody has to stand up and yell, quote, the emperor has no clothes, Paul added. Quote, and everybody's falling in lockstep on this. Pass the big, beautiful bill. Don't question anything. We need to be responsible, and the first goal of our budget reconciliation process should be to reduce the deficit, Senator Johnson said in an interview on CNN's State of the Union with Jake Tapper. Quote, this actually increases it. Johnson warned the bill is not going to get to Trump's desk in its current form, expressing confidence there were enough votes in the Senate to stop it. Quote, I think we have enough senators to stop the process until the president gets serious about spending reductions and reducing the deficit, Johnson said in remarks likely to be noticed in the White House. Republicans are using special budgetary rules to move the Trump package through the Senate and around a Democrat filibuster. As a result, Democrats cannot block the bill given the GOP's 53-47 seat majority. Every Democrat in the House opposed the package along with 2 House Republicans. If Johnson and Paul both oppose the bill, but the other 51 Republicans in the Senate were unified in support, the bill could still inch through the Senate and even still lose another vote, with Vice President Vance positioned to break a 50-50 tie in such a circumstance. However, Johnson and Paul's defiance likely signals problems for the bill from other conservative senators. Quote, the consequences of this bill will add to the debt, and if we don't get the bond market under control, then we're going to be paying a whole lot of money. Representative Keith Self, a Freedom Caucus member, said after the vote, quote, we're already close to $1 trillion in debt payments now. That is a real concern. It ought to be a concern of more people in Washington that this is an unsustainable path. We've got to get that under control. All right, so this is quite the situation that Republicans are in right now in the Senate. So, the House of Representatives just passed the big beautiful bill by 1 vote in the House. It's on to the Senate now for approval. Now, I've been very clear in episodes in the past that I'm not particularly a huge fan of this, right? There are definitely cuts in the bill that are great, right? Any budgetary cuts are great. But as the senators were saying, it does increase the deficit. It does increase our national debt. It doesn't get to the root of the issue. And I think that so many people are overlooking this. Let me break this down. I think there's a couple levels that are happening here right now. Let me give you why I'm coming at this kind of as a negative. So I'm 21 right now, right? The current national debt is somewhere around $36 trillion. It's a lot, okay? So what? I'm 21, probably the average lifespan by the time, I'm getting up there in age. I mean, we're seeing people living longer and longer. I mean, I've got probably 60 to 80 good years ahead of me, right? I don't want to keep living in a country that keeps shoving its debt down the road onto future generations. Our national debt is now being shoved onto my generation to fix it. And guess what? If we don't do anything about it now, my generation is going to grow up, we're going to go into Congress, and then we're going to shove it down the road to the next generation because that's what happened to us, right? Someone at some point needs to start taking accountability for where our debt is at and say, no, the buck stops with us. And that's what these senators are doing, right? They're starting to take some accountability here. We need to have serious cuts done in this country. Our spending is completely out of control. I have a graph I want to pull up in just a second. But that's my perspective. I'm coming at this as a young person, right? I don't want my country to be saddled with trillions of dollars of debt my entire life, right? I want to see a plan for how we're going to start to pay that off and get that debt at least down, right? We've got out of control of our spending with our national debt, right? And I think a lot of people recognize that's number one. Number two, like I was saying, I think that the budget cuts are great that are in it already, but they're not nearly enough, right? It's all fine and dandy to say, okay, we're cutting money, but it doesn't really fix anything until we actually balance our spending, right? Because we can cut as much as we want. If we're still spending more than we're taking in, there's issues there. if we're going to talk about tax cuts, we got to figure out how to balance our checkbook, right? I'm 21. I know how to balance my checkbook, right? And the fact that the federal government is being run by a bunch of people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s who don't know how to balance a checkbook is it's atrocious. It truly is. It's atrocious. The president right now is a businessman. He should know about this. He should be the biggest advocate for balancing our budget, right? As someone who has balanced the budgets of several companies in his time. And it's an issue that I've had with Trump is that he doesn't have an issue with deficit spending. No president, in fact, has had an issue with deficit spending in a while, which brings me to this chart. So this is a chart made all the way back in 2013 by Pew Research. This is before President Donald Trump and President Joe Biden. Okay? This is during the Obama administration. This is a great chart right here. So this is showing national debt right here. National debt is going up, 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 up. This black line right here. Let me see if I can zoom in on this a little bit more. Hold on a second. Let's zoom in. Zoom. Hold on, folks. Hold on, folks. We're getting there. View. Here we go. Zoom in. This is what I want. All right. Make this a little bit bigger for you. All right. Maybe we can see that a little bit better now. Okay. So it's a chart made by Pew Research. So this is spending on the X, and this black line right here is the debt ceiling. So every year, the House, the legislative branch, had the opportunity to put through a new budget proposal. They have raised the debt ceiling since the 80s and even before that. Well, you can even see all the way back in the 80s, we had a debt of under $2 trillion. Okay? It goes up and up and up. Republicans and Democrats are responsible. By the way, people love Bush and Reagan so much, and George Bush Sr. for that matter. They added to our debt as well. They were not fiscal conservatives, clearly, but we can see every single year our debt has gone up. Our debt ceiling limits have gone up, and it just keeps getting pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed. And this only goes to 2013. Our national debt in 2013 was $16 trillion. That was under Obama. That was towards Obama's first term, right? Our national debt now is $36 trillion. $36 trillion is being saddled on our taxpayers. It's atrocious. It's atrocious. Our government is out of control with the spending. It really is. And where is the bulk of this coming from? It's coming from entitlement programs. Frankly, it is. And no one likes to say the dirty truth that Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security are bankrupting our country. But you know what? I'm going to say it because I'm a young guy. I'm not going to get any of that money by the time I'm at that age. Social Security is going to run out in the next 10 years or so unless something is done about it. And I'm not going to see any of it. So I've been paying all this money in taxes out of my income where nobody asked me if they could take that money or not, right? I've been giving away all this money out of the goodness of my heart. Well, not out of the goodness of my heart, out of the government stealing it from me. I'm not even going to get any of it, right? So rationalize with me, sympathize with me when I get a little heated that every single year our government is increasing our national debt. So I think this is great. Mark my words here, though. The media is going to portray Rand Paul and Ron Johnson to be anti-conservatives, to be going against Trump, to be anti-MAGA, to be rhinos, to be fake conservatives, when they are the most conservative people right now in the Senate, frankly. They're the only two people right now who have the guts to stand up against a radical spending bill that is raising our debt ceiling and going to add more national debt to us, right? So you're going to see on the media, and it's very easy to fall into their trap, right? The media loves to paint people. And by the way, this is not even the mainstream. This is all alternate media now too, which frankly is starting to get to be more mainstream, okay? So mark my words, keep an eye out for it. You'll see this is going to come true. They are true of what they say, and they get a faction together to stand against this bill in the Senate. You're going to see them painted as anti-conservatives, anti-MAGA. They're rhinos, right? They want to stand in the way of this spending bill, this great, great, amazing spending bill. But in reality, they're standing against what we all have been against. If you're a fiscal conservative, you're against all of this, right? So I think this is great what they're doing. I commend them for the action. I commend the one House Republican who stood against this, who almost lost. The bill almost failed in the House because of him, Representative Messi. But yeah, it's wild out there right now. So this is not to say that I'm suddenly anti-Donald Trump. This is not to say I'm suddenly anti-Republican. I'm just pro politicians who have a spine. That's really what I am. And I think that there's a lot of great things that Trump has done. I think there's a lot of things that Trump has done that I don't really like all that much. Am I happy that Trump is in office over someone like Kamala Harris? Hell yeah, I am. Because if Kamala Harris was in office, you better believe that our spending would be even double what it is now, right? And we'd be raising the debt ceiling even higher. In no way would bat an eye, because she's a woman, and she's a Democrat, and she's a person of color, right? All right. That's all I got to say about that. I'm all fired up now. Gosh darn it. All right. So that's all I got to say about that. Thank you so much for joining our show today. Happy Memorial Day once again. Glad to see you all here at our new time. We got 140 people watching us right now. Geez, that's not what I'm used to seeing right there. We're getting more people every single episode. Remember, these episodes come in at 6 p.m. Share this with your friends. Let people know how great this show is. We got to get more viewers watching the show, guys. We love it, especially if you're watching Rumble, if you're watching on YouTube, right? It's all great. If you're just watching on Twitter, on X, that's just fine too. I want to make good videos for you all to see, and I'm glad you're enjoying the show. So if you're not following me on X, I'm at Homo18. Follow me at Homo18 on X, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, all the platforms I'm on there. Follow the show at Spin Cycle Live on X, on Rumble. If you missed an episode, you want to go back and watch older episodes, they're all on YouTube. They're all on Rumble. Whatever you prefer, go and see them there. But our episodes are coming out live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Reruns are going up every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday in case you'd prefer to watch on one of those days. But yeah, it's all great. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Have a great rest of your Memorial Day. Enjoy the rest of the day off. If you had the day off, hopefully you did. Enjoy the rest of the day. And we will see you back here on Wednesday for the next episode of Spin Cycle Live. Once again, I am your host, Nathan Hale. This has been Spin Cycle Live. We'll see you all again on Wednesday. Peace out.